All right. Hey guys, happy Wednesday. I'm Jess with Pollen. Most of you already know me, but super excited for the event that we have today. Losing clients to AI, super hot topic, but we shouldn't be, with Pollen mentor Ashley Cummings. So Ashley, thank you so much for being here today. And we're really looking forward to the chat together. Just a quick kind of like intro and bio on, Ashley, and you can obviously chime in, too, once I'm done, as I'm sure you'll do a better job. But Ashley Cummings is a freelance writer for e-commerce and marketing SaaS companies. Her work appears on sites like Business Insider, Uber, Shopify, LinkedIn, and Salesforce. And she publishes a weekly newsletter called The Content Connect for content marketers and writers. So super excited to have you here, Ashley. And not sure if you want to add anything there yet before we kick things off.
No, you've described me perfectly. So yeah, I'm ready to dive in.
And she's located in beautiful Salt Lake City, Utah. Yes. So, and her children are home today. So if we hear them in the background, hopefully not. That's what's going on. But I think we're all used to anything happening on Zoom. Yeah, for sure. But it sounds like they're entertained outside in the bouncy house. So
yeah, they've been coached. So we're gonna be okay.
I love it. Great. Well, to kick things off, Ashley, I know you talk a lot about, just kind of how AI is certainly being used, and especially from, a content marketers and writers perspective, and would really love for you to kind of chat a little bit about and kind of set the tone for us, just like some quick hot takes, right? Of like a lot of the things that you've been hearing and writing about, and really what's kind of like pushed you, as we'll, kind of talk about the survey and things that have been created. What's really pushed you to really dive in, to this topic?
Yeah, so I think content marketing, and especially as it relates to writers and designers, has been really interesting this year, just because, AI has been around forever, but it's the first time that it's really just infiltrated our market. And I think probably, I want to say since January is when it really, well, probably November last year, it really just started like popping up all over the place. And we started seeing all these hot takes of, X amount of tricks for using AI to basically like do your job for you, or all the tools that you need to know and be familiar with this second that will change your life. And then I think maybe the biggest one is with the release of ChatGPT and, people being scared that it's going to, take over the world. We're all going to lose our jobs. Like, robots are going to do everything for us, and whatnot. And so I was seeing a lot of that on social, and I was even, hearing from friends and different freelancers that, they were losing clients to ChatGPT. And so I basically, me and another freelancer, Emma Samasco, we kind of wanted to get a better hold on it, just to see what actually is happening, how it actually is affecting freelancers. And so we ran a survey, and just asked some of those most pressing questions to find out what actually is going on and how it's affecting us, and maybe what that looks like now, and how we should prepare for the future. So that's kind of what got me into it.
Yeah, I love that. And can you talk to us a little bit about some of like the key results that came out of the survey that you ran, and who was it kind of geared towards, and what?
Yeah. So we basically kind of wanted to know how it affected our industry specifically. So we sent it to freelancers, in-house content marketers, and then basically anybody who works in content marketing, especially with writing. Mostly freelance writers responded. And I was actually kind of surprised by the results. Like I said before, one of the reasons that we ran this is I was worried, okay, this job that I've been doing for 13 years is going to go away. So I think one of the most shocking results, in a good way, so pleasantly surprising, I guess, is just people are using it. So the majority, more around 76%, I think, said that they are using it. But only 5% said that they found it extremely helpful. And especially when it came to like writing, only 11% of people were using it to write complete assets, which I think is good, because that's not great. And then another, basically nobody said that the quality is either excellent or better than a human writer. So for me, like that felt hopeful to me. Like people are using it, they're interested in it, they're trying to learn how it can work for them, but they're also not finding it to be something that can come in and completely take over our jobs. So yeah, so for me, that's hopeful for a lot of different reasons. Mostly it's not going to take over our jobs, but also it can be a tool to help us if we learn how to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so going off of that, like how, like off of the survey, like how are people actually starting to kind of use like AI in their workflow, and talk to us a little bit about what was reported there.
Okay, so yeah, the biggest way that people are using it is for brainstorming, and I actually often use it for this as well. 71% of the people who took it said that they use it for that, and I think the AI can be a really good tool for that, just because it can, grab a bunch of different information that you might not have thought of and present that information to you, and then you can take that and incorporate that into your writing. And then the second most, I guess these tied, but people are using it for researching and for outlining. Research, you kind of have to be careful with, because it's a predictive tool. It's not like basically it'll make stuff up. They call it AI can hallucinate. So basically it'll go in, and if you give it a prompt, it can essentially make things up. So you just have to be really careful to make sure that you're fact checking with researching. And then a lot of people are using it for outlining, which I think is like a great use of it, actually, just putting in a prompt and having it come up with some ideas that, yeah, like I said, you might not have thought of, and making an outline based on what it generates along with your own ideas.
And how do you use, kind of AI in like your daily work? Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I don't use it as much as when I first started. Like I've played around with it a lot, but I mostly use AI, for the brainstorming. And then sometimes I'll use it. Like I think it does a really good idea with or a really good job with generic stuff. So if I'm like, hey, write a definition of, what is a freelancer or something, then there's so much information that's super generic that it can write a pretty good definition. So anytime I'm wanting to define something, I think that can help speed up your content creation. And that's probably the primary way that I use it. It also does a really good job of summarizing. So sometimes I'll get like a really long transcript and I'll be like, hey, read this, pull out the main information, and then it will just kind of summarize that for me, and I can get an idea of what's going on with an article or a report without having to read through the whole thing. So that's kind of a fun use for it as well. But yeah, that's mostly how I use it.
Yeah. Do you ever use it for any other parts of your business, like proposals or emails or anything like that? Thanks, Hillary, for the question in the chat.
Yeah, I don't use it for a lot of what I do is really custom, so it's hard for me to use it for proposals. So I don't really use it for that. I do use like Grammarly. I mean, I use that for everything, and I think that counts as an AI tool, but I use it for editing for sure. But then again, I always have like a human editor on the other side of it as well. But yeah.
Yeah. And as, kind of going back to the topic of the discussion of just like losing clients to AI and kind of the fear there, like what have you been hearing from potential, clients of yours or, folks who are part of, your network? Like, what are they, kind of talking about and what are they hearing from specific clients that they've had to be, kind of, combating, with, kind of establishing like, hey, you can't just use, AI tools to actually kind of create this content that you're looking for. Like, what have you been hearing?
So I've heard kind of a range of things. I went to a presentation earlier this year, and the whole presentation was on, how you can use AI to generate all your content and rank better in the search results. And to be honest, you absolutely can do that. Google hasn't quite figured out, rather than like when they first came out, they were like, you can't have AI generated content, will penalize you for that, but they haven't really figured out how to identify that. And so they've kind of embraced it and started incorporating it into their own tools. So I would say you absolutely can do that. The problem is the content that it's writing, that it's producing, especially at that mass volume, it's not good enough to engage people and it's not good enough to convert. And so I think that people can definitely, use it in their strategy, but you have to keep in mind, what are humans going to want to read? Are they going to identify this as AI generated content and feel cheated? And is it ultimately going to convert? So I think at the beginning, like with all this hype, like ChatGPT is taking over the world, it's going to take all of our jobs. It definitely can produce content, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the content is good. And I think that's something that we saw with the results as well. It's like, people are using it, but it's just not doing the job that it needs to in order to replace us. It's not a great writer. It's okay. And it can definitely speed up your processes for sure. And if you can work, in tandem with AI to, get ideas, even get a sentence and then tweak it or whatever, that, that's a great way to use it, but it's not gonna take over the world.
Yeah, certainly. Now talk to us a little bit more around, using it as a tool, right? It's great for brainstorming, but how are we actually, writing content that actually stands out, right? And that is, meaningful, right? I think it's important to kind of hone in on.
Right. So I feel like I could talk about this for a really long time. So if I start getting like super boring, just like cut me off. But so there's a lot of things. I think the first thing to do is to recognize how AI writes. It's really circular. It's pretty bland. It often uses the passive voice. Doesn't have very much variation in its sentences. You can train it to like change it a little bit, but still it doesn't have that style that a human writer is going to bring to the table. And so I think that, I like to call it developing your fingerprint, really developing a style that people can recognize as you. And I like to use the example of, I don't know, just Shakespeare. If you see something from Shakespeare, you recognize it. If you see something from Emily Dickinson, you recognize it. E.E. Cummings, Langston Hughes, they have these like styles that are so identifiable and just like charming, And so I think that really finding a way to bring your creativity into writing, which I think will be kind of more of a new trend, just seeing writing that's a little bit more interesting and a little bit more creative. I think we'll see a lot more of that. Another thing that I think that we can do is really develop a subject matter expertise, and this is becoming like really important. And there's a couple ways to do that. I think AI it's not a subject matter expert in anything. Essentially, it's predictive, and so it can analyze this language, and then it can tell us what's it does a really good job of predicting what would come next. But it's a copycat essentially. It takes what's already out there and it repurposes it essentially. So really becoming a subject matter expert is super important. Just conducting original research, diving into reports, adding your own analysis, adding like your personal narrative to it. Anything that you can do to just really bring in like a fresh take, fresh analysis, and that expertise from your own like human experiences is really going to make your writing stand out. And then just the age-old like journalistic quality of like interviewing. If you don't have that specific expertise, I think that's fine for writers to have their expertise be writing and to learn how to really interview other subject matter experts in their field and take their insights and pull that information into their writing. That is just a really great way to stand out.
That's great. Thank you. Hillary, do you want to ask your question? Sorry, I'm just like checking into the chat here.
Oh, Eric brought up such a good point. Eric, if you want to unmute yourself and share that, I think it would be a good nugget to speak about.
Yeah.
An interesting thing that I learned from colleagues that I used to work at Saatchi for a very long time, and I heard a few months ago that they'd called a town hall and this is just the agency that does the Toyota work. They'd call the town hall and let everyone know that there's a certain sort of level of writer that they're no longer hiring because they can use AI to fill that in.
Wow.
AI is much quicker. To your point, Ashley, it probably is more generic, but it's the kind of copy that doesn't really require, too much conceptual input. And so, when they're doing retargeting and so on, as they track you around, the ad that they're tracking you with can change format. If they're using a car, the color of the car can change, the background can change, blah, blah, blah. And so does the copy. So every time they find out more about you, they shape the ad more specifically geared towards you. So all of that writing, and even some of the generative illustrations or imagery, they don't need humans for anymore. But so then Hillary responded, she said, it feels like the creative work that underpins amazing campaigns can never be replaced. And I absolutely agree with that. Because again, actually, you mentioned using it for brainstorming, but at the same time, I don't know that AI has quite got it's a copycat, so it doesn't quite have a conceptual ability, nailed yet. But where I was going with the not hiring junior to mid-level writers is that these are the places that copywriters, back in my day anyway, they used to cut their teeth, get experience on how to concept, how to write for specific target audiences, et cetera. And unfortunately, it's kind of like being taken away from them. So they've got to figure out, those junior writers and mid-level writers have to start figuring out, what is the value that they can bring to be able to get back into the game, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, I think that there are definitely, there's definitely things that AI can, certain type of writing that AI can do for us. Like I mentioned, it's great at summarizing, it's great at anything that's like pretty basic. But I do think that, a couple things. One, I think that it's going to require content to be a lot more interesting and to really level up. Like as writers, we will need to be able to scale up a lot more quickly because AI can do that generic stuff. And then I also think it'll demand just like a higher quality of content from writers. Like we are going to need to make sure that we're interviewing, that we are conducting new research, that we are bringing new ideas to the table, that we are bringing creative takes. Like, the more that we can do to just, especially with how much content is out there, the more that we can do to just level up our content and make it more interesting. I think that will really help. As far as new writers, I think that they still need to go through the writing process. If we're just having AI do, everything for us, we're not, kids in high school aren't ever going to learn how to write if they don't start with those basics. And I think that's okay. I think it's okay to start with those basics and get your training and to just level up from there.
I have a follow-up question on that. Like, are you worried at all that there will be no space to get your training, right? Like you learn writing in school, but there's none of those like, early level writing jobs where, to steal Eric's phrase, you cut their teeth. Like that there's almost like a valley where you have to, it's impossible to get to those more senior levels if you haven't passed through the early ones. What do you think about that?
I think it'll depend really on the individual person and how motivated they are to write. We still have really good instruction on how to write well. We can read stuff from Ann Handley, we can read stuff from Eddie Schlaner, Robert Blythe. There's still a ton of stuff that has those principles and that we will need to practice. But it's like if you cheat and you just use AI, you're never going to learn those principles. So I think that I'm not worried about it personally. I think that there's still ways to get training. And I'm interested, I don't know if this will happen, but I'm interested to see if there's like a return of kind of like the mom blog, for lack of a better word, but just people with their like open diaries, their basically their ideas, just putting them out there in a way that's like interesting and creative. I'm hoping to see like more of that in the future, just kind of like a return to that, so that people are practicing their writing and they're being creative, they're putting it out there, and they're not using AI to do it. They're just kind of doing their thing.
Any other follow-up questions from that? Anyone?
No, I just think it's super interesting, like the way in which people get into writing and content development, I think is going to fundamentally change with this, because
Mhm.
there's like a perspective where it's like you can be purist, where you like learn writing the way that we've learned it for, hundreds of years, et cetera. And then there's like the more modern take, which is, hey, maybe I'm not the original author of every word that I write, and I'm not going to be purist about it. And I don't think one is better than the other. There's probably like novelty that's a little scary to me about the new wave of doing it that would seem very obvious and natural to, maybe a sophomore in high school or something like that right now, who's like, of course I would use this tool. It feels very natural. So I do think that like the derivative work that comes from a really strong nugget, like the scenario that Eric described, is totally ripe for AI to be a tool to help companies and individuals get more scale out of that core nugget. I actually think that's probably a really good thing. And might actually help the writer retain more value from one piece of content that they develop as well. They can actually create more derivative work from that at a faster pace.
Okay, so that's where the value comes in. Then in that case,
Yeah.
if I understand what you're saying, is like the value that individualistic writer that has their own sort of voice. That's something that ChatGPT cannot emulate or create right now. So all the derivative stuff is fine for AI, but you still need a human to come up with that sort of core nugget.
Absolutely. So the last question that I have actually, for you is, the future of content in the face of AI, like your perspective, what that looks like.
Yeah, I think that I do think that we will be shocked at what it can continue to learn and continue to do. I think that it will get better. But I also think it's important to remember just creativity. It's a deeply human task. AI, it really, it's not a teacher. It's not a thinker. It's a copycat. It can only predict. It can't create. And so I think it's also important to remember that we teach AI. It goes, it gets its information by analyzing what we are doing. So I guess being careful with what we write, and then remembering that it's always going to be a step behind, because it only predicts and copies. It's not going to be coming up with these new innovative ideas. It's always going to be copying what we do. So I think kind of as we move forward, it'll be important to just advocate for your creativity, advocate for that human content, advocate for your own perspectives, and just, develop your voice, be creative, and not relying on AI as the standard. Like the AI it's a tool for sure, but it's not going to teach us the things that we need to know in order to create excellent content. It's just going to be there as a tool to kind of aid us along. So,
Thank you for that. Now, I definitely want to open it up for any questions that folks may have in the audience. If you want to pop them in the chat or just come off mute, we're a super small group. So any other questions that we can bring up?
I had one. Ashley, you mentioned earlier about training AI. Literally, how do you train AI? I mean, because I get it as a concept, but like pragmatic aspect of it is like, what do you do?
Right. So this is a little bit beyond the scope of like my abilities, because you kind of have to be a programmer from what I understand. You can train it by, as far as like what we can do as writers, we can fine tune our prompts, and we can learn how to use the tools that programmers are making in order to teach it like style and voice and sentence structure and things like that. So from that aspect, we can kind of get better at prompt engineering. As far as like training it on like big things, again, this is like beyond my scope. I know people will use the ChatGPT API to feed it like loads and loads and loads of data to learn learn how, like, whatever, like how Morning Brew writes or something like that. And then that will train it better. But again, I don't know how to do that. I just know that it can be done. So yeah.
Are there like specific areas that you're like looking to train AI, or use cases that you're working through?
Me, not personally, just because, I mean, that would take a lot of like learning for a skill that I don't have. But yeah, for me right now, I mostly am using it just to like speed up any processes. If I can, feed it a brief and it can, give me an outline. I do also think that you have to be careful with this. I did have one client where they gave me AI generated outlines, and they weren't good, and that's not what they wanted. So it was like, you're kind of using this tool because it's there and it's like the hype right now, but it wasn't actually what they wanted, and it wasn't the kind of article that they wanted. So I don't know. So I'm keeping a close eye on it for sure, on different ways that I can use it and train it. But for now, I'm mostly using it just to kind of speed up the generic processes.
Yeah. Eric, to your point on how do you train AI, Devin would probably be a super qualified person in this group to answer this, but like, we actually have been experimenting with this a bit at Pollen. You can like take those generic LLMs and supplement them with your own proprietary data set to create something that's bespoke that you can't find anywhere else. And this could be something like, for us, for example, you can use any of these APIs that are available from like ChatGPT, OpenAI, or Facebook, Meta now, or Microsoft or Google, depending on like what floats your boat, and then pipe in any content that you have. So say you have a blog, you can actually like take those and create databases out from them, and then supplement those generic APIs, and then create your own version of ChatGPT where you can like query it and it'll provide you an answer as if that ChatGPT instance went to grad school, but the grad school they went to is for your blog or for your data set that you supplemented it with.
So that's actually fascinating. I'm not to hijack your meeting, but why I find that interesting is because I'm trying to sort of get a handle on prospecting, right? And so
Yeah.
I've just finished a massive database of like a Google Sheet, which I've now imported into ClickUp. And so I'm kind of ready to start reaching out. But what I want is, there's thousands of clients, right? I mean, potential clients, or thousands of contacts. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And each one of these emails or reach outs has to be sort of personalized. So I would want to train the AI in my voice, or kind of like my friendly, fantastic, warm side manner. But you know what I'm saying? It's so that it sounds like it's coming from me, but I don't have to spend like 100 days just writing emails to people. Does that make sense?
100%. And Ashley, I don't know if you use AI in this regard of your business.
I know that there are email marketing tools that are like doing this. They're incorporating AI into their tools so that it can essentially solve for those problems. So I mean, we've talked a lot about ChatGPT, but there's so many different AI tools and different ways that to stay up as a SaaS tool these days, like you have to have some element of AI. But yeah, I mean, I know Attentive, that ESP is doing a lot with AI right now to essentially do what you were hoping.
Yeah.
So
Eric, I think one use case you could do is like, you could pull all of those contacts into a Google Sheet or an Airtable database. And then you can actually, like, there's plugins that you can put into those Google Sheets. And then you can like drag it over. I'm sure that's on YouTube somewhere because I'm not doing a very good job of explaining it. But say each contact has like their name or some other information that you have about that. You can, and then you actually supplement these AI plugins with a little bit of information about your tone, voice, personality, how you would, write to someone. And then you just like pull it over and it'll automatically generate unique emails for each of those contacts. It won't be perfect. Like to Ashley's points, all of these things, if you want them to be really perfect, they require a really good editor. But it's definitely one use case you can do. I'll try and find something on YouTube to like show you what this would look like.
Yeah, I didn't even know about that, but that sounds fantastic because I mean, to your point, all I'm looking for is because to literally sit and write. I just start with 100 emails, right? It's going to take hours, and so what I'm looking for is something that can do the basic building blocks in sort of my tone or my style, and then I can come back and it's a quick little edit to sort of delete stuff, add words, give it a bit more personality. And then it's ready, right? Because I've actually had I've been the final editor on it, but it's just to the heavy lifting in generating all of those emails, but that feel like they've been somewhat personalized to that brand or to that person.
Yeah, totally. I think something simple. I have not watched this video on YouTube, but something simple like this might be a good something to map against. So you can see it'll like pull an email address, first, last name, stuff like that. And I'll just like get the wheel turning. I think that's like a lot of the helpful use of these tools, to Ashley's points, is like, brainstorming thought partner when you're working by yourself and just get the creative juices flowing, and also save a lot of time from writing emails. Yeah.
Thanks, Hillary.
Yeah.
Lucas, Devin, Raphael, any questions on your end? No.
No questions. I just want to say thank you again for taking the time to put this together. This was great.
Awesome. That's great. Awesome. Well, really appreciate everyone coming out today. Thank you. And thank you so much, Ashley, for taking the time to answer all of our questions. And Eric, I think you walked away with hopefully another tool that you can tap into on your end as well. And really appreciate everyone taking the time. This will be recorded and posted. So any follow-up discussions we can definitely have, within Pollen, and otherwise really appreciate everyone joining. So thank you so much, and hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you. Have a good one. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
See ya.